Good morning, Reunion. My name is Matt. I'm so glad you joined us online this morning. Reunion is a family of churches throughout the Boston area with a simple mission of helping people find their way back to God. We really wish we could be gathering in person, but we want to do so safely while thinking about what is best for our neighbors and community. So for now, we'll continue to be meeting online, which does have some advantages. For example, it's never been easier to invite loved ones to church. Click the share button below to share with a neighbor, family member, coworker, or friend. I'm sure you know someone else who could use some encouragement and a message of hope during this season. Please go ahead and invite them. For those of you who are brand new to Reunion, let me be the first one to welcome you. We're so glad that you found us online. Our hope is that this community can be a family for you and where people can walk alongside you on your journey. It's been great to see so many new people get connected with us recently. We'd love for you to go to our website, reunionmovement.com, and please click on the chat bubble that says connect with us. Or you can use your phone and scan the QR code using your camera and it will take you directly to our connection card. We'll reach out to you and help you find out more about us and get you connected. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you have something you need prayer for, please text prayer to 617-415-4466. Our staff and elders would love to pray for you. Today is going to be a little different from your typical Sunday at Reunion. If you're new, on the fifth Sunday of the month, we spend the morning either serving with or learning more about the organizations that we partner with. We have this rhythm as a community because we're committed to sharing the good news of Christ's love in both word and deed and demonstrating this in practical ways. This morning, we're excited to hear from 3 of our community partners, but before we do that, we just have a couple of announcements for you. First up, we miss spending time with you all and we want to know how you are doing. For those of you who consider Reunion your church home, please join us for our monthly location check-in next Sunday evening at 8 p.m. on Zoom. This will be a time to get together, reconnect, and see some familiar faces. Staff and elders will also be there to say hello. You'll find the Zoom link on our website calendar. Each week we highlight generosity during our gathering because it's one of our core values at Reunion. As a church, we give a significant portion of our annual budget to support partners like the 3 we're highlighting today, along with several other organizations that are doing great work both locally and globally. Your giving makes a difference. Thanks for being so generous, not only during the holiday season, but throughout the year. You can give by clicking Give on our website or using your phone to scan the QR code. Turn on your camera, point it at the code, and it will take you directly to our giving page. With that being said, let's hear from our local partners, Pine Street Inn, Fostering Hope, and Community Cooks. What's going on, Matt? Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey Matt. So I'm Matt Ferrer from Pine Street Inn. I'm the volunteer coordinator, and I've been here for 2 years.
Hi, Danielle. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, Matt. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm good, Matt. How are you today?
Awesome. I'm doing great. All right. I'm gonna hit these questions out that we had. And so, first question I have for you is this: what impact is your organization making in the community for those in need?
Very simply, our mission is to end homelessness. And the way we do that as an organization is through 4 main program ways. So street outreach, emergency shelters, job training, and then permanent supportive housing.
At Fostering Hope, our vision is called Project Zero, which is the dream of a day when 0 children impacted by foster care are waiting for a safe and supported family to care for them. And ideally, and as often as possible, that family is that safe and supported family turns out to be the child's family of origin through family reunification or preservation. But in the meantime, there's a desperate need for more temporary foster families and permanent adoptive families. And so our work really revolves around raising up and supporting foster and adoptive families. We help churches and individuals care for children and families impacted by foster care as partners and consultants to build sustainable cultures of ministry and care to the foster care community within church communities. And so our work can take many forms, but in this season in particular, we've been doing a lot of work to serve and support foster and adoptive families and kinship families and intact families. Really a lot of work in this season has been providing tangible and practical supports for vulnerable families through a program that we started called the Family Support Initiative. In response to gaps that families were experiencing in social supports and services, DCF asked if we could help step into moments of crisis and need that families were experiencing to provide support And so we've had a lot of opportunities to help mobilize churches to provide resources like groceries and diapers, wipes and formula, clothing, beds, desks, and lots of other things for vulnerable families in need in this season.
What particular challenges have you had to overcome during the pandemic, and what were your solutions?
I think our universal hurdles that we've all been dealing with, that everything is unpredictable, right? And that our model typically is one where we give volunteers a schedule that lasts for 4 months so that they can incorporate volunteering and service into their lives in a way that is predictable, the same way we want the programs to know what's coming. And I think suddenly predictability got turned on its head and there was none. And as I mentioned, especially early on, a huge challenge was being in touch with all 42 agencies we normally partner with, and each one having its own challenges, its own responses to the pandemic. So trying to figure out how do we tailor things, but also how do we navigate that line between like what's humanly possible and what's actually doable for us, since we're a very small staff of 3, currently 2.5. So I think that was a big challenge. And another one was, while we suspended meals, how do we keep our volunteers engaged? How do we maintain a connection with them, even as we were unable to sort of deploy volunteers as we normally would?
So the biggest thing at the beginning of the pandemic is we had no clue what to expect, and we didn't have the ability to shut down in the same manner that the rest of the city, the rest of Boston, universities, schools were able to do. And so we knew that time was of the essence. We just didn't know how it was going to come about. And what ended up happening was about 34% of the population tested positive. So we learned very quickly the hard way that we needed to reduce density at our main shelters. We needed to get masks and safety protocols in place, allow for social distancing. And so in order to do that, we had to partner with the city, with Suffolk University in the summer specifically. They gave us their 17-story dorm, and we were able to take 200 people and put them in that dorm, in that facility. So that allowed us to have less people at our main shelter, and allowed people to have their own room and have a sense of safety and security in a very uncertain time.
One other thing I would say is that a challenge that arose, that is something we don't typically do, was learning about individual households in quarantine that were in need of food support. We typically don't serve individual families. A large part of that is because there's a Good Samaritan law that protects us from liability and our cooks from liability if people are cooking and we're delivering it to a nonprofit. But if it's to an individual directly, that liability protection isn't there. But since we've been partnering with Forge Baking Company, we were able to say, okay, you know what, we can respond to these needs. So we did begin working in the spring during when it was still sort of a surge moment with the city of Somerville, their public health department, and we're continuing now to respond as needed to requests for food support for families that are in quarantine and people are sick, they can't cook, and they also are food insecure on top of that.
Can you tell us any stories about someone you've helped in particular?
I think particularly in this season about some of our stories of impact really revolving around the Family Support Initiative. We've had the privilege of responding to with our networks of churches to over 230 requests for support by social workers on behalf of the families that they support. And churches like Reunion have affected over 450 children impacted by foster care by providing support for the families caring for them. We've delivered almost $45,000 in estimated value of resources, thanks to the generosity of 25 to 30 churches who've been part of this work. And so we've gotten invited into some really hard stories and hopefully are bringing some hope and some really needed resources to families in really moments of crisis for them. And so just last week alone, we were invited into an opportunity to support a family who had lost their home in a fire. We provided help for a family who's working to escape violence in their home, a family struggling with mental health challenges. We delivered support to an undocumented family who's living in a shelter with 3 kids and had lost their job because of COVID. And we're working to find sustainable supports and systems as they work to get back on their feet. And then there's a specific story that Reunion was able to step into that I'm just so thankful for the generosity of our community to help this girl. We were asked to help provide clothing and resources for a 14-year-old girl who's now in DCF custody out of fear for her safety. She's living in a program for teen mothers as she still has custody of and is caring for her 1.5-year-old daughter who was born out of trauma. She's doing an amazing job, but we were asked to help get some gift cards for groceries and clothing and essentials. We were able to provide some diapers for the baby and winter gear and clothing and PJs alongside the foster box. We were able to get her a stroller and a new convertible car seat. The worker just reached out and told us how incredibly grateful she was for the support that she's been able to receive. And we're exploring other ways that we might be able to encourage and support her in this season.
Something that comes to my mind around the individual families in quarantine that we've served, we started to work with a primary care physician who was the first person that kind of let us in on this need. And she told us, I meet with patients all the time who are diagnosed with COVID. And they want me to give them some kind of certainty about something. And she said it was so painful for her that she couldn't tell them, I know how this disease is going to progress. I know you're going to be okay. And that being able to tell people, the one thing I can guarantee you don't have to worry about is food, and having that kind of certainty was a very powerful moment for her. And she said also for the healthcare workers themselves, because there's so much stress on them as well. So I think, again, injecting any kind of certainty into this sort of chaotic situation, that's something that has stayed with me and I think with us as we're working. That was one story. And then recently, as we've had volunteers starting to provide food again, one of the agencies that we cook for is Mass Bay Veterans Center in Somerville. And we got a note the other day from an intern, which I actually think I have in front of me, which really moved us. And it said, just a few minutes ago, several of the veterans came in to see me, and they brought with them a note from Community Cooks that came with the latest meal that you all dropped off. They asked me to send you a note thanking you for the meal and all the meals that your organization has prepared and dropped off. They wanted you to know how much it means to them to have people thinking of them and how much they enjoy the meals you prepare. And then he says, we've been doing a task-oriented group lately called Service and Purpose, and we're looking for ways to give back to our community. The men want to know if there's anything they can do to help Community Cooks in their mission. So there was a moment for us where we often think of things as a circle that sort of interconnects. And so getting a message like that, and also just hearing them say, what can we do to help? I think everybody wants to have a part to play in making things better. So
I get to work with so many people, like I had said, from all spectrums of society. And so I meet a lot of important people in different places. And so the 99 has been a sponsor for a very long time. And one of the head honchos over there came in to help and serve their annual meal. And I had connected this trainee with this executive, pretty much telling him that, hey, you have the ability to network in a manner in this short 6 months that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to. And he had a class where they Googled themselves and then looked at what came up. And there is a rap sheet there. And that's something that a lot of employers will look at through the Corey and dismiss them from having a job. But he turned on his charm, his goals for the future, really trying to make a better life for himself moving forward, and was able to convey that to this person, and was able to line up a job at the 99. And so I like to think that my words and encouragement we're helpful in being a catalyst in that. So that's not something that's in my list of things to do, but it's something that I acknowledge that I have the ability to do and the power to do. So
In what ways could someone from our church contribute or assist your organization beyond financial support?
Right now, in this sort of temporary model, we do have cooking opportunities available, and we've set them up in a different way from normal. Normally, we have teams. You know that Reunion has multiple teams. Now we have a sign-up page because teams weren't able to function sort of as they typically would. So cooking is one possibility that would be wonderful if folks wanted to participate in that way. There are definitely a more limited number of opportunities right now than normal. And last year, Reunion folks helped us do some outreach to our cooks community in general by helping to like address envelopes with cards to cooks. And that's something that we're thinking about doing again. So if that's something that folks would be up for, that is definitely something that we could use help with. Since, as I mentioned, right now, there's mostly 2 of us working. So any assistance that we can get in keeping our community connected would be really great.
we have a fairly robust volunteer program in normal times. We have about 5,000 volunteers that come annually through our doors that will help out at 4 of our shelters or one of our 35 housing sites. So there is that right now that's dwindled down to a handful of people who feel comfortable coming in and serving meals. We're keeping an eye on that as COVID cases rise around the state and the city. But if people were interested in coming in to serve, we are limiting that, but that is an option. Another way is we do card making for groups if they want to make cards with families to send out throughout our organization at the shelters, to tenants in housing, just to give a positive message that when we give the holiday meals, when we give out gifts, you could organize drives for the outreach teams, and you could do drives for the housing teams as well with welcome home baskets. So there's a number of ways that we could try to figure out how we can get people in beyond financially.
There are lots of ways to be involved. Much of our work to organize service-based activity for the foster care community is really organized through the local church. And so at Reunion, we're still kind of in the midst of working to develop a team to consider what it will look like to develop kind of a sustainable ministry and culture at Reunion moving forward. And so if someone would be interested in being part of that team, that might be one way that they could be involved. We're going to be working to organize some wraparound teams around foster and adoptive families to provide support and encouragement to them along their journey. We know that not everyone can foster, but everyone can provide a meal or maybe babysit or provide a note of encouragement to a family. And so that might be another way to participate. We will from time to time have the opportunity to respond to requests as a part of the family support initiative that I mentioned. And so as a part of that work, we may need people who can help either financially provide for specific resources for a family. We may need folks who can shop or go to stores to purchase supplies, or even if you have a car and you can drive and you'd be willing to deliver resources to a family when needed. Right now, we especially have some needs north of the city for drivers. That might be a way that people can be involved. And lastly, I would say, if you know a family who's caring for additional children through foster care or informal care, find a way to encourage them this season. Drop off a meal or send a note, rake some leaves or shovel snow, babysit if they'd be comfortable with that, or you can tutor or mentor youth in care or even just vulnerable youth in our communities. You don't have to wait to be part of kind of an organized movement to support and encourage families and children who are impacted by foster care.
Lastly, do you have anything that you'd like to communicate to people listening that we haven't talked about yet?
First, I guess I want to say thank you to the Reunion community, both at large, but also individuals in this community who've been so supportive and encouraging of Karen and her work through the Foster Box and my work through Fostering Hope. We are incredibly grateful for the support and encouragement and community that we have through Reunion. I think, secondly, I would just say that Karen and I thought about foster care for a long time. We thought about what our role was in this story, but we always, when the conversation came up, often just felt like the timing wasn't quite right. We felt like we were too busy or too broke to take that step that felt pretty significant from where we were to actually becoming licensed as a foster family. And I think for some of us, we're called to be a family for a child needing a safe and loving home, temporarily through foster care or longer through adoption. And some of us might be waiting for something, for things to be just right. And I would say sometimes there are legitimate things that are holding us back and should hold us back. But sometimes it might just be fear or inconvenience. And so I encourage folks who are feeling that to just pray about it, because ultimately these kids don't get to decide whether the timing is good for their lives to be turned upside down, and they don't need perfection. What they need is stability and safety and love. And so that I would say that, but then secondarily, I would say we know, as I mentioned, not everyone can or should foster. We're not all called to the same thing, but we believe everyone can do something. And so if you're interested in exploring ways that you can make a meaningful impact in the foster care community, and you're interested in being involved, feel free to shoot me an email, mike@fosteringhope.org, and I'd love to talk about that and ways that you can be involved.
I would say that in this time when most of us are working in isolation and maybe even living in isolation, it's particularly powerful for me and for community cooks to know that our community is still out there. And so even just being able to sit here and talk to you, Matt, and to feel that I'm also talking to the congregation in general feels particularly powerful and feels so important and sustaining. And I think that it's just very meaningful for us to know that you're there.
Our guests are people just like the rest of us, and they've just been dealt an unfortunate set of circumstances. We are here to help them get back on their feet. But if there are things that people are more passionate about, as far as with, criminal justice, with healthcare, with mental health, with youth, if they could be advocates in those ways, it can help prevent a lot of the reasons why people end up coming to our shelters in the first place. Access to healthcare, access to mental health services, things like that. But being a part of an organization locally and citywide really does play a huge part in tackling this issue of homelessness, indirectly or directly. So there are a lot of great partners that we work with, other nonprofits as well, that are really trying to tackle a lot of these issues. And so I think just being engaged is a great way of making sure that your time is well spent. I think that a lot of what we do here, I see just the vast size of a community of supporters that we cannot do without everyone who donates, without these corporate groups, without people who volunteer. It is a very complex issue than a lot of people know, but it has evolved over the last 50 years, and we're making dents for a lot of people to get back into housing. So
thanks for sharing with us and our community today. I know it's been really helpful for us to just hear about just what you're doing, and we're excited to partner with you.
I just want to thank Matt from Pine Street Inn, Mike from Fostering Hope, and Danielle from Community Cooks for sharing with us. Don't miss out on the different ways you can help. It's not just about hearing what they are doing, but participating as well. We'll have some of those important links and information on our description below. We're going to have a number of people involved with these organizations, so if you aren't yet connected, we'd love for you to join us. Lastly, this Fifth Sunday falls at a perfect time at Reunion. Each Christmas since 2008, Reunion participates in Advent Conspiracy. The heart of Advent Conspiracy is for us to get back to the real meaning of Christmas. Each year we take up a huge offering where all the proceeds will go towards blessing other people and organizations. This year, these 3 partners will be the recipients of our offering. We'll have more details coming up, but I want you to start thinking and praying about how you want to be generous this season and support these organizations. Let me close our time with a benediction. Christ has no body now on earth but ours, no hands but ours, no feet but ours. We are the eyes through which Christ's compassion cares for the people of the world. We are the feet with which Christ is to go about doing good. We are the hands through which Christ now brings a blessing. We promise this day to keep awake, to live each moment to the full, to look with eyes of compassion, and to act with kindness. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace and live the church.